because it comes with so much baggage and so much luggage that I don't want to be attached to be honest with you. I just don't, I don't want to be part of it. The other day, someone came to me, it's like, Pastor Sam, have you heard about all these things that's going on in the church? Like, don't even call me pastor. I don't even want to be known as pastor anymore because it comes with so much luggage to it that I don't want to be attached to it. But no, I am a pastor. We are a church. We are a Christian church. We're okay. God can redeem his own thing. And still, especially when it comes to finances, I think God can redeem it. And if we take it serious, if we put some work and if we can trust one another, then I hope that the Delaware Christian Church, you have found that the sincerity and the openness has given you the rooms to listen to and maybe in the future trust. Today we'll continue on that sermon series, in this sermon series, but we're going to talk about a not so good part of the journey. Right? Not so good part of the journey. We talked about this last week, that we all have that we are on this journey, that we are on the yellow brick road, and that we are trying to get to that place where we find the financial health that honors God. That's what this sermon series is about. It is not about giving, it's not about you giving, it's about we finding that financial health in our own lives so that we can honor God and then we can bless others and really live life worry-free. So there is a part of it that there is always in the journey, you're always going to find some ups and downs. So the question is this, what is the theme for us today? This is the theme, and what is the question? What is standing in the way of you achieving financial health that honors God? What is that one thing that is keeping you from achieving that financial health that honors God and allows you to bless other people around the world? If you get one of those, one globe, well, I mean, there is a globe out there that's called the Hunt Lennox globe. It is one of the oldest globe around the world, dating back to the 1500s. And in that globe, in the bottom of the globe, the guy who put it together put it this: here be dragons. He made a references to dragons in that globe, and I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit fascinated and afraid of dragons. We don't know why that guy put the word dragon on that globe. Maybe because he have heard about dragons. Maybe he saw dragons. Maybe he was pulling everybody's leg. But the idea is that he mentioned dragon, and everybody is fascinated with it. If there's one thing that word dragon does do is to spark our imaginations. Everybody who has ever looked at a globe and seen the words here be dragons have thought about and maybe imagined in their own minds how a dragon would look like. And there is something about dragons that fascinates people. There is many literature stories of dragons, and there's any mythological beings that has to do with dragons. There's many mythology stories in literature that talks about dragons. If you go to the good readers, recently as we went there, there's 302 books that talks about dragons. 302 books that its main subject is dragons. The number one book, according to the voting that was given there, was The Hobbit. And I made the mistake on the first service to say that The Lord and the Rings and The Hobbit goes hand in hand, and I got smacked all over the place, right? Listen, let me clear that up right here for all those who watch it at home and for those here. Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, they are not the same thing. But in The Hobbit, you see Bilbo Baggins and his friends going on the quest to liberate Erebor. And in that journey, in that quest, they found this mug, the dragon, and the dragon is standing on their way. The dragon is standing on their way, in the way to fulfill that quest. So so in any journey we go, in any quest we go, we will find difficulties. We will find some dragons, but we can't do it alone. We can't overcome the dragon alone. We need our friends, and that's why last week I invited you to join us in this quest, but not only to enjoy it by yourself, that we would go it together. I have invited some exciting people and some experts on the financial health to join us and to help us into this journey, to give us good advice, biblical advice, not only biblical advice, but advice about the market and what's going on in the world that will help us into finding the financial health that honor God and blesses people. One of those individuals taught us on Wednesday night. I have his information up there for you. He taught it here on Wednesday night. Our workshop is Dusty Hostetler. He has all the CFPAAMS. I don't know nothing about what it stands for. I just know that means something important. That's what it is. It means he's important. He came and he taught us, he talked to us about walking on that journey and gave us some very good information that will help us into that journey of finding financial freedom. This coming week, he's going to extend on what I've been talking about here on today, and he will give you some practical ways in which you can defeat this dragon. Today, it is not a good part of the journey because journeys has ups and downs, and we're going to talk about this dragon that we are having to going to deal with it. This dragon is an old mean dragon. He has brought many people, millions of people into misery, have destroyed people's lives, and the name of this dragon is debt. That's the name of the dragon, debt. Let me give you some very insightful, information, statistically wise, on this dragon. As I was researching this week to talk about this, on May 10th of 2022, the Federal Reserve Bank of New York released this article that said this: the Federal Reserve Bank of New York Center of Microeconomic Data today issued its quarterly report on household debt and credit. The report shows a solid increase in total household debt in the first quarter of 2022, increasing by $266 billion. $266 billion, and it's 1.7% of what it was before, and increased it to $15.84 trillion. The balance now stands 1.7 trillion higher than all at the end of 2019, before COVID-19 pandemic. The report is based on data from the New York Fed's nationality representative, and the list goes on, and the article goes on. The people are getting more debt now than ever before. According to the debt.org, consumer debt in America was almost 14 trillion in 2019, and now you can see that it's 15.8 trillion. That.com says that most of that money, it is that debt, it is on house, cars, student loans, and credit cards. The debt.org also tells us that every household has at least 4 credit cards, and most households have $6,400 in credit card debt. $6,400 in credit card debt. And I'm sure if I continue to talk about it, it won't surprise you. And one of the things that I know it won't surprise you is that the fact that debt increases the stress in your life, produces stress, and increases. People who are in deep debt worry a lot. And the number one cause for stress in America is money, is debt. And we know that when stress is not managed well, it can cause some very devastating effect on our lives. People sleep less. They eat is not as regular as they used to. There is an imbalance in their health. They have heart attacks, strokes. They're all related to debt and the stress that it comes from it. I know one of, it's not surprised if I mention this, but the number two reason why couples get divorced today in the United States is financial problems, and 70% of those financial problems is around debt. So make no mistake, the debt dragon is one bad dude. He will absolutely mess you up. He will mess your life up. It's for that reason you would think that people would run away from him and try to avoid him at all costs, but that's not what happens, right? That's not what happens. And the question is always, if we know that the dragon is going to come and devour us and eat us, why are we not running away from the dragon of death, but run into it? I know, if you saw it, think back to the movie The Hobbit. Do you remember how sleek and how sleek the dragon was, and how he was a smooth talker, and his name was Smug, right? He tries to deceive Bilbo by being smooth with his smooth speech and clever lies, and he was trying to bring them closer to be able to keep them from achieving their goal. In my house, maybe you're not a Hobbit fan. In my house, if I want to talk about dragons, I like the How to Train a Dragon. I think that's a much better movie, to be honest with you. How to Train a Dragon, right? You just get and you sit on the dragon and you can ride the thing around. You train it to do for you whatever you want it to do it, right? I mean, my sister lives in Thailand, and she was sending me a video of, she sent us a video of a Thailand dragon. And I have a picture for you. I have a video for you right there. That's the thing. I'll be running away from that. Everybody's enamored about when it comes to dragons. Everybody there's a mystery about it. There's something that draws you to it. But if you knew what the dragon was capable of, we would run away from it. But he's a smooth talker, and he always tells us something like this, that, you know what, the closer you get to me, the more happy you will be, the more fulfilled you will get, and you will get whatever you want. To be assured that you'll be fulfilled because you got what you want. And don't worry about it, you have plenty of time to pay up. Oh yes, that dragon is very, very careful. So we have our work cut out for us in the attempt to naturalize, to train it, to control it. And control it we must if we're going to find the financial health in our lives that will honor God and bless people. And for us to on that journey to find the financial health, I think there are some questions that we ought to ask in relation to the dragon. And the first question is this: why is this dragon so big? Why is this dragon so big? In other words, why do we have so much debt? Let me offer you on that question three answers. The first one is this: our entire culture is set up to encourage debt. I mean, from the TVs we watch, to the magazines, to the social media, we are conditioned to be able to buy things. They made us want and they make us desire. Everything in this world entices us into buying that thing that we can afford. How many of us have watched a TV and see a car, and it's a nice shining car, and in the end of it says 0% finances, and we're like, 0% finances, hook me up, I'm buying that baby, and then you gotta pay up, right? Edmunds.com, a car website, says that 1/3 of car owners owe about $5,000 more than their vehicles are worth. 5,000 more. We love mails at the Roses. You know, you're always looking forward to receiving mails at home. How many of you guys like mails, right? But at our house, the most mails we got, you know what it is? It's credit cards. It's credit card offers and flyers with the blowout, a sales blowout, right? And I see the credit cards offers and the sales blowout, and I get those letters. I'm running out of the house, and I have a chalk collar that you guys can see. Laura, hide it. But as soon as I ride out of the house and she said, oh, Keith, I gotta go back inside. She's like, I'm making this real. I'm gonna make it real. Well, we are all the time just stuck into wanting to buy that which we can't really afford. Which brings me to the second thing, is so many people lack contentment. So many of us lack contentment. And if I'm honest with you, as I always am, and I try to be honest and open and honest with you all the time about my own struggles and my own life, one of the things that your pastor struggles with is contentment. Because there is a line between settling for less and not being that which God wants for you and being content. Like there's a line there that I do not know. And in my own personal life, I often meditate on 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 and 10. It is not up there because this morning as I was going over the sermon again, I was like, God, praying and praying about this moment. And I just felt God, I'm like, listen, you got to share with your congregation about your struggle about contentment and which verse you go to when you're struggling big time. I go to 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6 and through verse 10. Verse 6 says this, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Paul is writing to Timothy and say, listen, godliness is cool and everything, but to make a difference with godliness, you gotta find contentment. You have to be content. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with the lack of contentment, there is no gain in it at all. And he goes on and says, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with this we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. Look what Paul is saying here. He said, like, listen, those who desire to be rich. And I was like, I don't desire to be rich. But so every time I read this, the word to desire to be rich, I read I put into there the desire to have the things that I can afford. The desires of things that I can afford. When my desire is to have the things that I can afford, I fall into temptation, I fall into snare, and I fall into harmful, destructive things that destroy not only my personal life, my family life, my marriage, and my witness to you. I do. Contentment is a problem. And it's not only a problem to me, though, it's a problem for many of us. But we ought to find contentment in what we have. The third thing to answer that question, why is the dragon so big, is that dragon is huge because so many people are looking for stress relief. I mean, one of them, I read a story of this guy who went to his wife's closet and got in there. She had 100 new dresses, 100 outfits with the new tags, with tags on it. She never used it. She just bought it and hang it in there. And he said that every time his wife had a bad day, she went out, bought a dress, brought it home and hang it in there. I do that with shoes. He said every time she went out shopping. But it's not that just that woman's problem. It is our problem. You have heard, it's a guy's problem too. You have heard this saying before. The only difference between a man and a boy is the price of their toys. Have you heard that statement before? And most of the guys that looked at me and said like, boy, you're a boy, you're buying shoes. I'm buying trucks and boats and this and that, right? And it's like, that's cool and everything. For every woman who goes clothes shopping when she gets stressed, there is at least one guy who goes out to Dick's Sports Goods and to Bass Pro Shop or to Best Buy, and they go there and buy their toys. That's why the dragon is so big. It's because we are in a culture that encourages that. We lack contentment, and we're looking to ease our stress by rewarding us by buying things we can afford. We got to stop feeding the dragon. I know that sometimes in the church we try to scare people out of the things, and that's not my purpose, has never been my purpose, is to give better understanding. And one of the things that people have said is the dragon of debt is evil. That's not evil. So that's the second thing I want to talk to you about. It comes in the form of a question. Is that evil? Is that dragon evil? It is not evil. It is not. So I might be surprising you here. No, it is not. That is not inherently evil. Several passages makes this clear. One of them is Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 6. I have it up there for you. So here's God speaking to God's people. He says, the Lord your God, through Moses, the Lord your God will bless you as he has promised. You will lend money to many nations, but you will never need to borrow. You will rule many nations, but they will not rule over you. Here in this passage, God is giving direction to the Israelites on how they should conduct themselves in the promised land. And he says, in the promised land, you will be able to, I'm going to bless you so much that you'll be able to lend money to people, to nations out there. If lending money, if borrowing money was a sin, God was actually helping Israel, helping the world sin. So that's not what God does. That is not sinful. It's not a sin. Some people point to Romans chapter 13 verse 8 as a way of deceiving God's people about talking about that. And yes, there are some pastors who take the passage out of context in order to make a point. We don't do that here at Delaware Christian Church. We are honest to God's word. Romans chapter 13 verse 8, most people read this and say, see, you're not supposed to get in on that. Owe nothing to anyone except for your obligation to love one another. If you love your neighbor, you will fulfill the requirements of God's law. What you need to do, what we need to do, and what pastors need to be teaching God's people is that there is a context to the passage, and in context of the passage, it's about relationship. What Paul is telling the people in Rome is this: listen, live your life in a way that honor God and other people. Don't give people room to talk bad about you. So don't owe nothing to anyone. I mean, like, don't live your life in a way that people can point a finger and pick all the wrong that you are doing, because people will do that. Don't give people room to talk bad about you. Live a right life. It is not about finances. It's about relationship. I think if you're going to talk about finances in the church, I think there's a better passage, Matthew chapter 5:42, that really explains some things to us. The statement of Jesus to his disciples, to you and I today. And this is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5:42. Give to those who ask, and don't turn away from those who want to borrow. Jesus is like, listen, you ought to be generous. Give to those who ask. And we all have encountered those people who have asked us for money or for help. And that's fine, but you can only help people if you have your finances in a healthy position. If you don't have in a healthy position, you won't be able to help anyone. But Jesus goes on and says too, don't turn away from those who want to borrow. No, the Bible doesn't teach that the debt is evil. However, the Bible clearly does teach us that debt is dangerous. It is not evil. It is not evil. It's not a sin, but it's danger. Proverbs chapter 22 verse 7 tells us this: just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. Proverbs chapter 22 verses 26 and 27 says this: don't agree to guarantee another person's debt or put up security for someone else. If you can't pay it, even your bed will be snatched from under you. It is very, very important to understand that just because something isn't evil doesn't mean it is not dangerous. Not because something is not evil doesn't mean that it is not dangerous. We talk about there's many objects that they are not evil. They're using them is not sinful, but can definitely cause. It is definitely dangerous on how you handle it. For example, a car, right? Is a car evil? No, it is not evil. But if you drive recklessly, guess what? It will be evil. It will be dangerous. It's really dangerous if you drive it recklessly. What about a knife? A knife is not easy, but it can be very dangerous, and depending on how you use it. What about a phone? A phone is not evil. I have seen a lot of people knock technology out. It's like, that's not evil. How you use it, though, can be very dangerous and can destroy your life and the life of those around you. It's very important to understand that just because something isn't evil doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. Same thing is true about that. The third thing that I think is important for us to talk about in order to train our dragon, in order to subdue the dragon, is this: could that dragon actually help me? I mean, I think if you can train this dragon, and if you can sit on top of its head and fly it around, I think it can be very beneficial to us. So I think a better idea for us is not trying to kill the dragon, is actually try to manage it well so that it will do for us what we want it to do for us. So the answer is yes, it can help us. It's always better if you can keep from going into that, for sure. But there are certain situations where that is actually very helpful. And so there are some tests for you to know if it is helpful or not. I think there are some tests that you're gonna get into and need to pass in order for you to actually make it worthwhile and make it work for you. And I have 3 tests here. The first one is this. The number one is this: is the item you were born against going to go up in value or help you earn an income? Is what you're buying going to go up in value and earn income? If you're going to get in debt in order to buy something that is going to go up in value and that's going to supplement your income, then that's a plus. You should be able to do that. The second test is this: is the item you're borrowing against worth more than that? A simple rule of thumb to follow is simply never to borrow more money than the item you're buying is actually worth. Just you don't have to be a financial expert or advisor to be able to do that, to understand that. It sounds very simple, I know, but the problem is that a lot of us fall into the temptation to buy something that is worth less than what the market value is. Here's the third test, the test number 3 that is important. Is the debt load you are taking on manageable on your current income? Is the new debt load that you are taking on, is it manageable under the current income that you have right now? If you say this statement as you're buying, we can afford the payment if we cut back in this area or that area or in this place or that place, then you can afford it. You shouldn't be buying it. The 3 tests: is the item you're borrowing against going to go up in value or help you earn the income, on income? Is the second test is the item you are borrowing against worth more than the debt? The third one is this: is the debt load you're taking on manageable on your current income? If it doesn't pass all 3, it is not a good investment. It is not investment. It is a debt. The last thing I want to talk to you is this: in order to train and subdue the dragon, in order to manage the dragon, the question is, how can I subdue the debt? How can a dragon? How can I train it? How can I control it? And I think the number one thing you need to do is to stop feeding it. Stop adding to your debt. Think about that person who's always on a diet and he's always losing and gaining weight. He's consistently on that cycle, losing and gaining. It's not that person, it is not doing the work. It's not that person has a problem of working out or a problem with eating. The problem there that it is not that. The problem is that they don't do it all the time, right? There's lack of discipline and consistency. They have too many weak moments that they undo all the hard work that they have done. The same thing is with our debt. It's the same thing with this dragon. We're not disciplined enough, so we gotta find that discipline in order to pay up the debt that we owe. You got to stop feeding it. Stop adding to it. The first step. The second one is this. If you want to do that, you want to train the debt dragon, pay off debt you couldn't have. Just start paying off what you have. Make a commitment with yourself, with your spouse, with those around you, with those who you borrow money from, that you be faithful in paying that. Psalm chapter 37, verse 21 says this: the wicked borrow and never repay, but the godly a generous giver. The wicked borrow and never repay. If there's one thing that Christians should do, is pay their bills. If there's a number one thing, oh Pastor, I can't afford it. Well, if you can't afford it, there are people and there are things, there are series like this one who we are wanting to help. We want to help you, right? It's not only about having a sermon. It's not only about having experts like Dusty come and to share with you about different venues different strategies that you can use in order to pay your debt. It is also finding some coaching. Listen, I'm telling you, if you are serious with this conversation, especially debt reduction, I want to hook you up with some coaches, some financial coaches, the Christian people who will help you, keep you accountable, and help you stay on course when it comes to finding the financial health that honor God and give you the freedom that you need from your mind, from your heart, to bless those around you. We want to equip God's people. I don't want to just talk on a Sunday morning and expect that you go home and get it all right. That is dumb. There are people who think that, there are people who think that out there. No, not here at Delaware Christian Church. I know how hard this is in my own life. I know it is hard for you. I want to equip you. Delaware Christian Church was to equip you by putting before you some good resources that will help you in this journey. But it starts with this understanding that we as followers of Jesus, it is okay to borrow, but you gotta pay it back. We are not wicked people. We are godly people. There's no excuse for us. God has provided everything in Him, in His Word, through His community, for us to be able to help one another and come alongside each other in the most difficult topics of life, which one of them it is finances. So maybe you're like here, there's no hope for me, Pastor Sam. There's no hope for me. There's no hope for me. I'm so in debt that there's no hope, for myself. We've got to finish this sermon. I want to give you a little story that I think is powerful. And that is I think I want to finish this sermon in hope. Because when you start talking about that, I look at my own life and my finances, I think like, oh man, I'm in trouble, right? Maybe you're thinking the same way. You're in trouble like, no. I think there is at least one story here that brings us hope that I think is important for you to pay attention. It's 2 Kings chapter 4. In 2 Kings chapter 4, we are told about a widow who came to the prophet Elisha, right? And with just this kind of a problem that we have been addressing here on this sermon, which is the second chapter of the book, the debt dragon. She was concerned because her husband had died unexpectedly and left to her a lot of bills unpaid. The guy passed away and left her with a financial mess. The creditors were knocking on her door and asking her for their money, and they even threatened her, if you don't pay up, we're going to take your 2 boys and we're going to make them slaves. They're going to work for us to pay for what you and your husband owe us. She was freaking out. She was stressed out. I couldn't imagine she was sleeping those nights. She was under a lot of pressure. But Elijah, the prophet of God, gave her some very interesting instruction. He told her to borrow as many empty jars as she could from her neighbors and start filling them up with the last bit of olive oil that she had on a little flask. So Elijah comes to her, like, what do you got? She's like, I got this little flask with olive oil. He was like, go around your neighborhood, knock at everybody's door, send your boys out there and tell them to gather as many jars as possible. Go borrow as many jars as possible. I am sure they were thinking like, what the heck is this guy doing? Why would I gonna borrow more jar? We don't even have the little flask is not even full. How is it that we're gonna borrow more jar? This is embarrassing, we're not gonna do that. But instead of arguing with the prophet, they did exactly what the prophet told them. They went around, they collected as much jars as they could, they brought it home to their mother, the kids brought it to the mother, and they put it all out there, and then something amazing happened. Elisha said, hey, start pouring it into those jars from the little flask. Start pouring it into the jar. And she did that. She noticed that the flask wasn't running out of olive oil. She poured and poured and poured, and she filled jar after jar for her single little flask. It was only when there were no more jars to be filled that the flask ran out of olive oil. Then Elijah told her, all right, okay, now that they are all filled, go sell all of these jars full of olive oil and go pay those to whom you owe money to. I love this story. I love this story because it reminds us of two very important things. Two very important things. There is no such a thing as hopeless situation as long as God is in control. Things may seem hopeless, or others might write you off. There might be vultures going over your head. There might be some creditors knocking at your door. But God has a story of rescuing His people, right? From Red Sea to lion's den, to empty flask, right? With no olive oil, with a little bit of olive oil. God, He likes to show up and to flex up the fact that He rescues His people from hopeless moments. The second thing that this story in 2 Kings 4 teaches us is this: God is most likely to do what He can when we are doing what we can. Can I say that again? God is most likely to do what He can when we are doing what we can. The problem of Christianity is not that God can't do. The problem is that we are not doing what we can do in order to see God bless us. The clear implication of this story is that the widow if she wouldn't have been willing to borrow the jars and to do all the work, if she was whining, blaming her husband, complaining, blaming her friends, complaining, blaming the government and the environment, if she would be complaining and whining about all of these things, it would be pointless. She would never get the blessing that she received from God. When we do what we can do, God step up and do what only He can do. If you are diligent in doing the simple things that is within your power, man, I can't imagine what God will do for you and for me and for us. How would He bless us if we did what we're supposed to? And I think a part of that journey is training the dragon, so that we, like in the little kids movie, can sit on the neck of the dragon and control it, rather than allow the dragon to control us. I want to transition to communion right now, because this conversation of debt is much more than just a material thing. It's not much more than a financial thing. It's a spiritual thing too. In Colossians chapter 2, verses 13, we read this.